And it says I'm live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode number 6 of Tarot by the Hour. I'm just waiting to see if it shows up on YouTube here. Does it? Today's topic, oh, there it is. Okay, today's topic that I chose is, I call this practical enlightenment. And so what today's episode is based on are 2 books. And that's these ones, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck and Everything is Fuck. They're by Mark Manson. This one came out in 2016, this one in 2019. And yeah, for what happened in 2020, these books are pretty good for, preparing us for that time. Well, now it's already past us. But yeah, so what are these books about? So very briefly, this book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, focuses on what truly matters and what we should prioritize, especially when it comes to problems and things that we don't like. And this book talks about how we find hope even in times of chaos and how we can actually embrace the struggles of life. And so in order to get us into the mood of what today is going to be about, I'm going to read you a passage from the first book so that you kind of know where I'm going with this. Okay, so most of us struggle throughout our lives by giving too many fucks in situations where fucks do not deserve to be given. We give too many fucks about the rude gas station attendant who gave us our change in nickels. We give too many fucks when a show we liked was canceled on TV. We give too many fucks when our coworkers don't bother asking us about our awesome weekend. Meanwhile, our credit cards are maxed out, our dog hates us, and Junior is snorting meth in the bathroom, yet we're getting pissed off about nickels and everybody loves Raymond. Look, this is how it works. You're going to die one day. I know that's kind of obvious, but I just wanted to remind you in case you'd forgotten. You and everyone you know are going to be dead soon. And in the short amount of time between here and there, you have a limited amount of fucks to give. Very few, in fact. And if you go around giving a fuck about everything and everyone without conscious thought or choice, well, then you're going to get fucked. There is a subtle art to not giving a fuck. And though the concept may sound ridiculous and I may sound like an asshole, what I'm talking about here is essentially learning how to focus and prioritize your thoughts effectively, how to pick and choose what matters to you and what does not matter to you based on finely honed personal values. This is incredibly difficult. It takes a lifetime of practice and discipline to achieve, and you will regularly fail. But it is perhaps the most worthy struggle one can undertake in one's life. It is perhaps the only struggle in one's life, because when you give too many fucks, when you give a fuck about everyone and everything, you will feel that you're perpetually entitled to be comfortable and happy at all times, that everything is supposed to be just exactly the fucking way you want it to be, and this is a sickness, and it will eat you alive. You will see every adversity as an injustice, every challenge as a failure, every inconvenience as a personal slight, every disagreement as a betrayal. You will be confined to your own petty, skull-sized hell, burning with entitlement and bluster, running cycles around your very own personal feedback loop from hell, in constant motion, yet arriving nowhere. And then he names 3 things, like 3 subtleties in this whole thing of like how not to give a fuck. And he says, not giving a fuck does not mean being indifferent. It means being comfortable with being different. Because here's the sneaky truth. There's no such thing as not giving a fuck. You must give a fuck about something. It is part of our biology to always care about something and therefore to always give a fuck. The question then is, what do we give a fuck about? To not give a fuck about adversity, you must first give a fuck about something more important than adversity. If you find yourself consistently giving too many fucks about trivial shit that bothers you, chances are you don't have much going on in your life to give legitimate fucks about. And when a person has no problems, the mind automatically finds a way to invent some. That's quite interesting. And I think that's the reason why something like utopia can never actually exist, because we're just not wired that way. Whether you realize it or not, you're always choosing what to give a fuck about. Essentially, we become more selective about the fucks we're willing to give. This is something called maturity. Maturity is what happens when one learns to only give a fuck about what's truly fuck-worthy. The idea of not giving a fuck is a simple way of reorienting our expectations for life and choosing what is important and what is not. Developing this ability leads to something I like to think of as a kind of practical enlightenment. No, not that airy-fairy, eternal bliss, end of all suffering, bullshitty kind of enlightenment. On the contrary, I see practical enlightenment as becoming comfortable with the idea that some suffering is always inevitable, that no matter what you do, life is comprised of failures, loss, regrets, and even death. Because once you become comfortable with all the shit that life throws at you, and it will throw a lot of shit, trust me, you become invincible in a sort of low-level spiritual way. After all, the only way to overcome pain is to first learn how to bear it. So that's basically what this book is all about. And then he kind of gives other kinds of examples of, what is truly fuck-worthy. Like my favorite example in that book was when he talked about a little girl who was wearing a blue hat and she was throwing a tantrum because it was the wrong shade of blue. And that girl was still pretty young. And so for that girl in that moment, that wrong shade of blue, that was her entire world. That was the biggest thing that she could think about. But to us as an adult looking at that, it's like, oh, girl, what's your problem? It's just a hat, get over it. So also in terms of everything, like he's talking very much like big picture kind of thinking, because if you look back at your life and everything that we've experienced so far, then yeah, you can think about, okay, what was it that was really important to me at a time? And was that actually important? Or did I waste too much energy on that? So, and now you might be asking, okay, what does that all have to do with tarot? I'm glad you asked. So the thought that I had when I was going through that stuff is, can we actually apply this to creating better problems with tarot? So you're wondering, okay, why would I even want to create problems with tarot, let alone better problems? But hear me out. So when we, like it said in the book, like if you don't have any problems, your mind will invent them. And we usually obsess over every little thing, mostly about things that are out of our control. And those are not good problems. The better problems are the ones that we're actually in control of, where we can do something about our lives and where, we take action, we take responsibility, accountability, and, where we move on, level up, all that kind of stuff. We do that by creating better problems and not worrying about the nickels that we get back as change or all this kind of stuff. And now my cat starts talking. You can see her. She's right there. Yeah, please don't. No, no. No, I'm not talking to you, Artemis. I'm sorry. So, okay. What would hinder personal growth when we use tarot? So a lot of times, and we see this in life readings that we do. We see this in pick a card readings when people want to know What is so and so thinking about me? Why does that even matter what another person is thinking about you? So, what is the real question? Like, why do you want this person to think about you in that way? You know? So, we are way too focused on other people, and a way of creating a better problem would be to look at ourselves and, do the Jedi thing, search your feelings and ask yourself, okay, why does it matter so much to me what person XYZ is thinking about me? What do I want the outcome to be? Like, why am I invested in that? And another thing that kind of hinders our personal growth, especially in today's world, where, everything is basically fake on social media. You see, people are using filters. People are only showing the best parts. They're showing their awesome vacation pictures. They're showing, the awesome food that they have at a restaurant. All these influencers are showing whatever kind of products they're using that they're essentially getting money for to promote. And we don't even know if they're really using those products or if they're just telling us that because they get paid for it. So we're always comparing our own lives to something that is essentially fake out there. So we're seeing other people's snapshots and we see what they present about their lives. And of course, they're only going to present the best possible thing about them because, they want to seem really cool. They want to have friends and whatever. But everything is carefully curated. Nobody is going to show what it's really like. Nobody is going to show the chaos. Nobody is going to show the struggles, barely. And, in a world where we always talk about, oh, you just got to be authentic and everything, like, what even is authenticity anymore? We're so hung up on comparing our lives to other people's lives, to fake Instagram bullshit, to, glossed over magazine pictures and everything. Like if you look at the pictures on like a TV guide, you see that those people that are on there, like those celebrities, their skin doesn't even have pores anymore. It is so photoshopped. Like there's not a single wrinkle, there's not a single pore. Everything is gone. It's like it's like a baby's butt, basically. That is just not natural. It's not how things happen. So we're getting ideas in our heads that have nothing to do with reality. So how would that benefit, or how would we benefit from that? Um, so yeah, tarot is not a quick fix or easy answer. It's a tool to explore all the parts of you, basically. So if you want to ask questions, ask how questions or why questions. Not, is my ex coming back and when am I going to get married? And, I mean, sure, you can ask about um, a job interview that you're heading into, but like using tarot for something predictive is also not very productive because the future is not set in stone. Everything can always change based on what you decide. And, you have free will. And that is also something like when you get a reading or like in my case, when I get a tarot reading and I do not agree with any of the cards, when I don't like what I see in front of me, I don't have to take it as is. I can just say, okay, I don't like what's there. So I'm going to do something to change that. I'm going to make sure that that doesn't come true. So what is it that I have to do to, get around that and create better problems, essentially? So yeah, like tarot offers so much for us that we can work with if we're just willing to go there. And that also requires, really being able to go within, looking at ourselves and facing hard truths, something that we might not like, life sometimes can be ugly, warts and all. And accepting it is the first step to, creating something better. Yeah, so when you're not asking like deep dive questions in order to avoid uncomfortable answers, I feel you're also not using tarot to its full capacity. Because, yeah, like when we do the whole shadow work thing, there's so much that we can explore. And from my personal experience, I can say that, yeah, I got to know myself from all kinds of, angles, and I became more comfortable with certain things in my lives, and I also learned to create better problems. I learned to, focus on big picture and not be hung up on small details. And tarot helped me with that, especially like the whole shadow work stuff. Okay. I also have 2 spreads prepared, one for each book, by the way. Sip, sip, everyone. Yeah, so when you read tarot, like, why would you even want a tarot reading, either from someone else or doing the tarot reading yourself? Like, do you actually want growth, or are you simply looking for validation? Because validation is not going to help you. Like, if you want validation, talk to a friend and be like, hey, yeah, this is what I want to hear. Please just tell me what I want to hear. But if you want growth, then you might be faced with answers that you don't want to hear. And a lot of us don't like that, but it's what helps us. Yeah, like he said it in this book, pain, as much as we hate it, is useful. Pain is what teaches us to pay attention to when we're young and careless. It helps us show us what's good for us versus what's bad for us. It helps us understand and adhere to our own limitation. It teaches us to not fuck around near hot stoves or stick metal objects into electrical sockets. Therefore, it's not always beneficial to avoid pain and seek pleasure, since pain can, at times, be life or death important to our well-being. That was in this book. So yeah, basically, since our lives are not very long, like, we have to then decide very carefully what we want to spend our time with, like what truly matters, and how do we find happiness. And something that he talks about in this book is that happiness is not actually about avoiding problems. Where did I have that? Oh, here. Okay. So, life is essentially an endless series of problems. The solution to one problem is merely the creation of the next one. Don't hope for a life without problems. There's no such thing. Instead, hope for a life full of good problems. Problems are constant in life. Problems never stop. They merely get exchanged and or upgraded. Happiness comes from solving problems. The key word here is solving. If you're avoiding your problems or feel like you don't have any problems, then you're going to make yourself miserable. The secret sauce is in the solving of the problems and not in not having problems in the first place. Happiness is therefore a form of action. It is an activity, not something that is passively bestowed upon us. Happiness is a constant work in progress because solving problems is a constant work in progress. The solution to today's problem will lay the foundation for tomorrow's problems, and so on. True happiness occurs only when you find the problems you enjoy having and enjoy solving them. Unfortunately, for many people, life doesn't feel that simple. That's because they fuck things up in at least one of 2 ways. And number 1 is denial, Number 2 is the victim mentality. So people deny and blame others for their problems for the simple reason that it's easy and it feels good, while solving problems is hard and often feels bad. So yeah, and that's the same way with reading tarot. Like when we do that, a lot of times we don't actually want to solve problems. We just want to be comforted. We want validation. And we just want to hear what we already have in our head. And we don't want to be told, hey, what you're doing is not the best course of action. Maybe you should do this. And it's exactly the opposite of what you want to hear. So yeah, putting your fate in the cards instead of making things happen yourself, that is also a very unuseful way of using the tarot. That is hindering your personal growth. And then another thing that happens with tarot sometimes is the so-called spiritual bypassing. And that is when people take their spiritual tools, whether it's cards or crystals or whatever they work with, and they use that to avoid real life. So they're kind of fleeing into their spirituality and everything. So they're doing that in order to not have to deal with any issues. Hi there. Is it a question about today's topic? Because I'm not doing readings here in this chat. But yeah, if you have a question about tarot in general, sure. Yeah, so one thing that for me personally that would hinder my growth when I'm using tarot is I'm not using tarot when I'm unwell. So if I have a migraine or a cold, then I'm not going to touch the cards at all, because when my energy level is down, when I feel really drained, there is no way that I can be of service to myself or others. I also don't want to get all that icky stuff on the cards. So I keep them nice and clean. I don't want to get all that stuff on there. So yeah, when I'm physically sick, or even when I'm really emotional. So when I'm in a very emotional state, like when something happens, when I'm really angry about something, when I'm sad about something, or, whatever gets those emotions going, then I will not take out the cards to do a reading, because one of two things can happen. Number one, if I get really good cards, I most likely am not going to trust it. I'm like, you sure about that? It's not really true, because that's not how I feel right now. So how can you even say that? And if I get the so-called bad cards, like something like the Tower or Three of Swords, Ten of Swords, I'm like, see, I knew it. And so I'm going to take that as validations to feel even more bad about the situation, get more aggravated, more sad, whatever it is. And so I'm going to not really see what the actual message of the cards is. And so when I'm in a very emotional state, no matter what emotion that is, I am not going to use the cards, because it's better if I just let a few days pass, center myself again, and then I can see, okay, what was that situation all about? Why did I react the way that I did? And rather go into that, like I said, do the Jedi thing, search your feelings, and try to understand, okay, what even got me to this point that I was reacting so much? Like, why was I overreacting? Why was I sad? All these things. And once again, doing in the whole shadow work thing. And that is a much better way of doing it, because in that moment, I'm not going to trust the tarot. Like, I'm going to see something that it's not. And I should also not get a reading from someone else, because since I know tarot card meanings, so if someone else just shows me the cards that they pulled, I would interpret something that my brain wants to put onto that, instead of listening to what they actually have to say. So yeah, in that moment, like, emotions or even hormones are crazy, and I stay away from the cards in that moment. So So what are then good reasons to take out the cards, and what would be productive questions? So, for example, one thing that I do sometimes, or that I've also done for others, is when you have to make a choice between two options. Like you don't really know what to choose. So I take out the cards sometimes and I'm like, okay, this is option A, option B. What would happen here? What would happen here? And then it's kind of like a tarot pros and cons list in a way, where you look at, what either option has to offer in order to help you make an informed decision, which basically, if you really look at it, you're going to have a reaction to either reading. You're either going to like it or you're not going to like it. You agree with it or you don't agree with it. And that also tells you what you want. It's kind of like, I saw this in a movie once where there was also a person who was supposed to make a decision, and it was like a heads or tails thing. So the coin was flipped up. And then so the question was, what do you want it to be? And it was never revealed what it actually was. The question was, so what do you want it to be? Which option would you like better? And then that's what the person did. So, yeah. Excuse me. So yeah, we can use tarot to check in with ourselves for all kinds of situations. And we can also do that before things get bad. Also, a good reason to take out the cards is to look at why, for example, we are afraid of something, so that we can use the tarot to investigate discomfort and to gain clarity. So, like I said, like instead of just sitting with your feelings and you don't really know what it is, sometimes taking out the cards to see it in front of you in the pictures, like see it in black and white or color, kind of helps you to like zoom in on what it is that might be bugging you about something. So that can then give you like the start to your thought process. Because sometimes when you have so many thoughts in your head and all of a sudden like you don't really know where to start, you don't know how to focus, tarot can be a way of, helping you, okay, let's quiet down, let's focus on this one first, and then everything else. Yeah, so tarot can help us cut through the noise to find out where we can gain clarity. So that would be a good way to use it. Let me just look at my notes here. Yeah. And when it comes to the second book, where he talks about chaos and living in uncertain times, there is also this thing of, tradition and values and all that. So what kind of values do we have in our lives? And like, are those values truly ours? Or do we have these values from past generations? Like, did those values get installed into us by our parents and grandparents because that's how they did it and that's how it's always been? And, they just like, this is how we do it. And, that's how you should do it too. Or do we have different values? And then there's, so he talks about good values and bad values. So good values are based on, our reality and also the society and the social construct that we live in, and things that are within our control, like honesty, compassion, even like how we creatively express ourselves. That's like a good value that we can have. And bad values are things that are outside of ourselves, where we are seeking approval for something, or like the whole superficial thing, which also includes like money, wealth, fame, the whole, Instagram, how many followers do you have, comparing yourself to others, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So, yeah, the question is, what can values do for us? And there's sometimes our values can be put in place again. I have experienced this, like something like when we, especially in historical context, getting humbled is a good thing. In this book, he uses the example of a Holocaust survivor that helps by telling people about what it was like and what kind of suffering they went through and all of that. And when I was in high school, we went to Berlin on a field trip. And back in East Germany, we had specific prisons where they put the enemies of the state, so to say. And those were normal, average people. And, someone who helped another person escape from the country, for example, they would be in that prison. And they would sometimes even torture them so that they would give up the names of other people who helped them. Like, a lot of stuff happened there. And so we visited like one of the biggest prisons that they had back then. It's now a like kind of museum type thing where they guide you through and they tell you all these things. You can look at all these rooms, and they still have those like a lot of those torture devices in there. And the people that are guiding you through there are not some like tour guides that learned about all of this in a classroom. No, it's former inmates that take you through that, and they can really explain what happened. And when you see that kind of stuff, like when you hear those stories, whether it's in those camps in like Germany and Poland, where the people in the 30s and 40s were brought to, or something like the Stasi prisons, you kind of start thinking more big picture, and you realize that the things that you think are really big problems, like making sure you get a good grade on that next exam, or, does the person sitting next to me in the classroom like me, that kind of stuff, that all gets kind of small in comparison when you look at these things. So yeah, when we think big picture, like what really matters at the end of the day, and you also apply that to tarot once again to ask better questions about how to actually bring your life forward, then you get something good out of tarot. When you take the chance to really humble yourself. Oh, look who's here. Phoenix Fire. Hi. Yeah, evening for me. Like it's, what is it? No, it's 8:33 over here where I am. So yeah, when we humble ourselves and see, okay, what other people are dealing with in this world is way worse than anything that I could be dealing with. And I then in turn like use that for tarot, then I can ask better questions instead of just does so-and-so like me? That's like the most common question that we always get. Okay. And so, yeah, it's okay that, so I wrote down, it's okay when things are falling apart. That's where hope begins. That's also what's written in this book here. Yeah, so like I said, when my mind is all over the place, tarot can offer me a starting point. And even if I don't like something, that is also an answer. And at the end of the day, we just want answers to make sense of things, because that's like why we even do tarot readings, whether it's for ourselves, for others. That's why people come to us for tarot readings. They want things to make sense. And yeah, so some of the cards that I pulled for these books, and just a recap, Phoenix Fire. So I'm talking about these two books today by Mark Manson and relating that back to tarot. So this book here, the cards that kind of reminded me of that are, first of all, the Devil card, where we're always like playing victim. Like the whole victim mentality, like, oh my God, I'm stuck in this situation. It's so bad. I don't know how to get out of it. Yes, you know how to get out of it. And if you don't know it yourself, you can always ask for help. But a lot of times, like, this is a self-created problem because I don't know if you can see it, like the ring that he's wearing around his neck, it's way bigger than his head. The same thing is true for her. So they can easily just take that off and walk away. So when we talk about bad habits that we have in our lives, any kind of addictions, for example, that hold us captive, whether it's, I don't know, gambling, smoking, drinking, um, any kind of bad habit that would keep you stuck in that personal feedback loop from hell that he was talking about. So yeah, the devil card represents that fairly well. And yeah, we can choose if we want to stay in this or not. Another card that kind of fits this is the whole, like the Seven of Cups, which is what I talked about with social media. So we're seeing all these different things and we compare to that. And it's like, oh my God, I would like that too. But it's so much, how do I even get to that? And then we're presented with all of these things and we don't even know where to look first, where to focus, what to do. Like, how do I get that? It seems so easy for these other people, but it seems so hard for me. So living in this whole comparison, that for me is also the Seven of Cups, and that doesn't do anything. So what we do is we take the next one, the Eight of Cups, and we just walk away from that. Or also the Judgment card. And for that, I actually have one that is a lot louder, where we're being asked to realign with our core values. And this has to be the loudest Judgment card that I have in any tarot deck. This is my from my Ansata tarot. So yeah, this wake-up call you cannot overhear. Like, there's no way to sleep through that. So yeah, you are being asked, like when this card shows up, okay, what is it that you really want? Where do you want to take your life? How do you want to do this? What are your values? What do you really want to accomplish? And how do you realign with all of that? Like, if your life seems to be messy and if you're all over the place, how do you get that back into something manageable? Or like in terms of chakras, if the chakras are not aligned, how do you get them back into alignment so that the Kundalini enlightenment thing can happen? And that's something. So those are the cards that I associate with this book. Now for this book, I picked some cards as well. So here we have one of the cards that I chose is the Tower card, but also from the Ansata Tarot. My favorite Tower card ever is this one, because the woman in the green dress here, she is actually facing the ground. Like, she's like, oh, I'm like falling out. No, she is like jumping out of the tower consciously. She's doing that on purpose. And that is the whole premise of like choosing your problems and like, yeah, I'm going to tackle this. I'm going to do this. And I'm going to have hope that I'm going to land on my feet like a cat. So yeah, this is not the being a victim to circumstance or a victim of circumstance. This is taking charge of your life. And then, of course, we've already talked about this, hope, the Star card. So after the Tower, when everything has been shaken up and you're left with like the ruins of everything and you need to rebuild, that's when the Star comes in, that hope for a better tomorrow. And that's the driving force for us. And another card in terms of that, of course, the Death card, the transformation card, because we can only complain about our lives for so long before we realize, okay, we actually have to do something about this ourselves. You know, transformation can only come from within, never from the outside. Sure, you can get outside impulses that trigger the desire to implement some changes, whether that is eating more salad, eating more vitamins, or exercising more, like little things, and then, starting bigger. Or if you have a job with colleagues that are not really doing their job and everything always ends up being piled up on your desk and you have to do everyone's work while only getting compensated for your own, maybe finding a different job. Like, that change comes from within. Other people might trigger that, but you are the one who actually has to do it. And so there's a little, what was there? Yeah. So the thing about hope, and in this book, he uses Pandora's box as an example. And at the end of it, like he says, okay, like when Pandora's box was opened and all the evils of the world came out, hope was the only one left. And he was asking the question, like, is hope also one of the evils? Do we have this whole hope thing wrong? Maybe. And so what he says is, we've got it backwards. Everything being fucked doesn't require hope. Hope requires everything being fucked. The sources of hope that give our lives a sense of meaning are the same sources of division and hate. The hope that brings the most joy to our lives is the same hope that brings the greatest danger. The hope that brings people closest together is often the same hope that tears them apart. Hope is therefore destructive. Hope depends on rejection of what currently is, because hope requires that something be broken. Hope requires that we renounce a part of ourselves and or a part of the world. It requires us to be anti-something. This paints an unbelievably bleak picture of human condition. It means that our psychological makeup is such that our only choices in life are either perpetual conflict or nihilism, tribalism or isolation, religious war or the uncomfortable truth. And I have never even thought of hope in that kind of way, like even with the star card. So yeah, what does that hope actually mean? What is hope? And when do we have it? And yeah, he's right. Like, we can't have hope if there's no bad situation. So if you imagine this whole utopia scenario where everything is fine, nobody has any problems, therefore there wouldn't even be a reason to read tarot. There's also no reason for hope because everything is already fine. And that always reminds me of the musical by Leonard Bernstein, Candide, where they claim, or the claim in that story is that the time that we live in right now is the best possible time ever. And everyone at every time in history, they can say that about themselves. Like, at that point in time when you are, the way that things are is the best possible time that you can live in. And for us, I mean, just looking around, like, we have internet, we have all these luxuries nowadays. Like, we're so spoiled with transportation, we have food, we have so much abundance in so many ways compared to the medieval times when they didn't even have toilets inside, water toilets. Hey, Crystal. Thanks for being here. So yeah, like, tarot is a tool for hope. So it doesn't promise us any easy answers, but it offers guidance through the struggles. And that's what we can use it for in order to use it in a productive way, because it can show us how to grow and how to face hard truths. So based on these books, I put together 2 tarot spreads. So for the orange book, where everything is about, creating better problems and prioritizing what matters, this is what I came up with. And I just made like a 5-card spread for each of the books. And in this one, I made the prompts. So for the first card, what am I giving too many fucks about? So we're looking into, like, what are we wasting our energy on? Number 2, what truly matters in my life? really looking at my own life and not, life in general and what other people might think should matter in my life. No, what matters to me in my life. Number 3, what limiting belief is holding me back? Number 4, how can I realign with my true values so that I can then, take the next step forward? And number 5, what will I gain by letting go of what no longer matters? So, yeah, when we let go of the things that we're way too focused on, we can then focus on the things that help us level up. Because a lot of times, what we're dealing with is also other people's expectations on our lives. Like they have an idea of what our life should be. And so they're projecting their things like, oh, are you sure you want to do it that way? I would do it that way. Like that's nice for you, but, does that apply to me? I just got the Good Fortune Tarot and the Calendra Tarot. I have not heard of those yet. But I have to look them up. Are they good? Do you like them? So, yeah. Like with this, we're looking at our priorities and what is truly just for us, not for other people. Oh, you love them. Because especially also we know this in facing different generations, when our parents or grandparents have certain ideals of how we should live our lives, how things should be done. But newsflash, times change, and we have to adapt to how the times are changing in order to, still be able to work within that society. Because the way that things are now in 2025 cannot at all be compared to 1985 or 1955. That's not the same thing. Like we're living in a very different world. So our problems, our priorities are now different than our parents' or grandparents' priorities. So yeah, and that's sometimes a little bit hard, especially in that whole generational conflict kind of thing. So yeah, we have to figure out what matters to us. And for the blue book, the book about hope, I created something about finding meaning in the chaos. So question number 1, what chaos or challenge am I facing right now? So when you're dealing with a lot of stuff and you have just so much noise, okay, let's focus on one thing. Let's take it one step at a time. So what is the most pressing challenge right now? Then there's a typo. What false hope or illusion must I let go of? Number 3, what lesson can I learn from this struggle? Because there's always a lesson in it. And then number 4, where can I find true hope and meaning when it comes to that particular struggle? Like how can that actually teach me something about what to hope for? And the last card, how can I build resilience and move forward? So these are both readings where at the end of it, you get an action, something that you can actually do to, have some kind of progress in your life, and not just, like a predictive reading where, okay, this is the outcome, but it doesn't really tell you how to get there. And that's what I like about tarot, using it in a way to find out how to get from point A to point B. So that's what I did with these kinds of things. Okay, so we're almost at the hour. So they're new. So I guess they just came out. Okay, I'm going to have to look at them and see what they look like. Yeah, I haven't really looked into any tarot decks that have come out yet. There wasn't really anything. It seems like on Amazon, the only decks that you see coming out are the, what is it called? The Inside Studio Edition or whatever they're called. The ones that have all the Disney decks and Pixar and whatever, all those movie, TV shows like Stranger Things and Buffy and all that. So it looks like they're getting one deck after another. The one that I'm actually curious about is the one about the Princess Bride, but that one got pushed back 2 years. So I'm hoping that that means they're going to make it even better, because yeah, that one will be interesting. And otherwise, I don't really have any particular deck that I can think of that I would be interested in. Kalandra decks, beautiful artwork. Oh, it's on Amazon. Okay. Yeah, I'm also not really one for looking on Kickstarter and like waiting for that to happen and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. Okay, so I looking at my notes here. I think I said everything that I wanted to say. So yeah, today the whole practical enlightenment is basically where we really take inventory about what is going on in our lives. How do we tackle the whole situation? What is the bigger picture at the end of all of this? And is it really worth getting worked up over? Or is there something underneath all of that that we should actually focus on? In a nutshell, basically. So, just looking through my notes. Yeah. So, practical enlightenment involves embracing life and all of its struggles rather than fighting it. It's about accepting suffering, failure, and, life as like a natural thing that happens, and that the struggles in it are necessary. Because if we didn't have any struggles, we also wouldn't level up. We would never make any progress, and everything would be boring, basically. Yeah. Yeah, I also didn't really announce it on Instagram today. But yeah, so practical enlightenment, what I was just talking about, it doesn't mean eliminating the struggle. Instead, it's about choosing struggles that align with your core values. And when we stop seeking constant happiness or success and accept that life is full of ups and downs, then we gain clarity. And that clarity helps us focus on the things that give our life meaning despite the challenges. So even if we're struggling like with interpersonal relationships or in our job or whatever it is, all of that becomes more meaningful when we really look at it. And we don't have to avoid, we shouldn't avoid it. And instead, yeah, embrace it and grow from it. And this obsession that we have in our world with being successful, like whatever is the definition of success, everyone has a different version. Like, is success, like here on TarotTube, is that having 1 million subscribers? Does that define success? Or is success, in my case, like with this series here, showing up for myself, doing it, because today was also one of those days where I really thought about, like, do I want to continue this? Even though I made a commitment to myself that I want to do this for an entire year, showing up for myself, there's a specific reason why I want to do this. I'm putting myself through this struggle on purpose for my mental health. And afterwards, I'm always glad that I did it. But today was one of those days where I didn't really want to show up, but I did it. So even though my mind was all over the place today, but I'm glad that I did it. It's another week. So now I've done this like for 6 episodes. And yeah, so sometimes some days are easier than others, but I'm glad that I did it. So it's also the whole, like in psychology, when we talk about the ego, like what is me, what is the ego, and why do these things happen? Thank you. I was also watching a very emotional movie this morning. I was watching My Sister's Keeper for the first time. Oh my God, that was more than I could handle today. Like this was the wrong day to watch it. It's a really good movie, but it was definitely the wrong day to choose that movie. So I struggle with the same thing. Yeah. I don't know what it is. I mean, for me, I know what it is. Like, I have actually looked into that. And yeah, I am in perimenopause. That also adds to like the whole dealing with coming out of like domestic abuse and all of that. So put that together and ugh, hormones, brain fog, all that kind of stuff. Feelings, so many feelings. But I'm getting through it one step at a time, one day at a time. Yeah, 43 here, so yeah. I didn't even know, like, when you hear about, like, menopause, you always think about, like, those traditional 2 years with the hot flashes and everything. No. I actually learned that the entire menopause thing, now we're getting into a different topic here, can last up to 20 years. Isn't that fun? Isn't that something to look forward? It's so much fun to be a woman. It is, but, I mean, that part I could do without. So, yeah, in today's world, I don't think I would wanna trade with a man. Mm-mm. I like being a woman. And, yeah, but going into that can last up to 10 years, then you have the actual menopause, and then, like, almost a decade getting out of it. I can make mental health worse. It can make mental health, yeah, absolutely. And, like, the combination of everything, like, the past 12 years, of that whole domestic topic, and then I think I started the whole perimenopause, like, looking back at it, like, the first symptoms came when I was 39, I think. And, yeah, like 39, 40. That's usually around that time when it starts. I'm gonna be so happy when that whole thing is done with, but it's only been a few years, and I haven't even gotten to the worst part yet. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm not complaining. It's one of the struggles that I'm going through, and afterwards, I'm gonna be really happy that I did this. Just like right now, I'm really happy that I showed up for myself. I did another episode, and I'm gonna show up again next time. In 2 weeks, I'm not gonna show up, so I actually have to cancel that one or delay that episode another week because um, my family is coming here and they're going to stay with me for almost a week, and we're going to do like big renovations here. So I'm not going to be available to do the session on the 1st of March. Yeah. But all the other ones, I am going to show up. Okay. So thank you to everyone who was here today and who showed up during the live stream. Or if you're watching this back, thank you very much. Leave a comment down below, like what do you think is a useful or unuseful way of using the tarot? Like, what are your personal experiences with that? And I hope you will have a good rest of your weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.